Who doesn't know this famous Disney princess? Her rags to riches story has been captivating children's heart around the world, including mine, since its first release in 1950. Her kindness, humility, and perseverance have taught children to stay hopeful in difficult times. For dream always comes true is its slogan. Her signature blue dress has also been many children's choice for costume to wear to Disneyland or during Halloween. With the release of Cinderella live action back in 2015, I was even more in love with Cinderella's dress. I mean, seriously, no wonder Sandy Powell won Oscar for the best costume designer. It was gorgeous. Which then kind of got me thinking, wait a minute, which period does Cinderella's dress come from? I know, it's weird to think something like that. But then again, that question just popped up while I was watching the movie because days before, I just finished a test on my history of costume class. So yeah, it's I can't help it. Now since we're all in quarantine thanks to COVID-19, oh my god that rhymes. You'll be glad to know I have too much time in my hand and has decided to use it to analyze and find out which period does the famous fairy tale take place. On this video, I'm going to analyze the original cartoon's costume because I think it's best to go back to the original story and figure out what Walt Disney Animator's ideal timeline for Cinderella's story is. So if you guys are as curious as I am, then keep on watching. By the way, before we start, do you know Walt Disney's Cinderella story is not the original story of Cinderella? In fact, Walt Disney largely based his story on an older French fairy tale that came out in 1697, titled Cendrillon ou la petite pantoufle de verre, or it means Cinderella of the Little Glass Slipper, by a French author called Charles Perrault. Some illustrations for Perrault's storybook show the story takes place in the exact same year as the book was published, which is the 1697, or the late 17th century, or as often people call it, the Baroque period. I was thinking if we were to put Perrault's period into Cinderella's story, her dress would have looked more like these. Late 17th century in France saw women wearing full loose sleeves which end slightly below the elbow, broad necklined, and often with drop shoulder. The bodice is tightly corseted as we can see from the triangular corset shape here, and rows of curls stacked up above the head and create this big volume for the hairstyle. There was a lot of brocade and laces being used as well, while Disney Cinderella's blue gown was quite plain. So you see, this is how Cinderella's dress would have looked like according to the original story by Perrault. And this is Walt Disney's version of the dress that I'm trying to figure out which period it comes from. Let's talk about the latest dresses first. Specifically, we're going to talk about the shoulder area or the sleeves area. If we take a look at Anastasia and Drizella's sleeves, they look like normal modern puff sleeves. Only the animator probably forgot to draw the details to make them look like puffy sleeves. But Cinderella's sleeves are kind of different. They're not as long as Anastasia's and Drizella's, and we don't see a lot of this kind of very short puff sleeves in modern times. If anything, it reminds me of an older style of a puffy padded sleeves back in 1500s or mid-16th century, the Renaissance era, which is called baragoni. Now these paintings, they're all from 1550s or the mid-16th century mid-Renaissance era. A little background about all of these three women before we talk about baragoni. These three women are from the Medici family, and if you don't know the Medici family, they're actually this huge aristocratic family from Italy that held a significant role in European politics during Renaissance era. They were very, very wealthy. For example, this woman over here, she's Elizabeth of Valois, the Queen Consort of Spain. She married Philip II, and she's also the daughter of Catherine de' Medici and King Henry II of France. And then this woman over here, she is Lucrezia de' Medici, the Duchess of Ferrara. She is the first daughter of Grand Duke of Tuscany, and Grand Duke of Tuscany's name is the first Cosimo de' Medici, so he's also the Medici family. Her mother, Eleonora di Toledo, adopted this young woman, and she's called Leonora, or Dianora. This lady died at the age of 17 years old, so she was very young. But she also married her brother, because incest is a normal thing back then. Although I think it's not exactly incest because she's adopted. Wait a minute, why am I talking about all this? Let's just get back to Baragoni before I sidetrack even further away from the topic here. Now, Baragoni is just a simple puffy pad that covers the seam line between the bodice and the sleeves. The bulky sleeves itself is called gibbon sleeves. While the shape of Cinderella's puff sleeves resemble Baragoni a lot, I don't think it's Baragoni because Baragoni always has these slash details on them, which dated back all the way to 1477. The slash detail, on a second thought, I don't think I'm going to explain that because it's gonna be too long and I'm sidetracking again. It's irrelevant to Cinderella's analysis, so I'm gonna leave it there. The slash details dated back all the way to 1477, and Cinderella doesn't have them on her sleeves, which I think is why Cinderella's sleeves might come from the later years. Now, these pictures are from fashion magazines back in 1880s. As we see here, the year is 1889, same goes for the other one. The left picture is from a French fashion magazine called Journal de Demoiselles, and if we look at here, Le Journal de Demoiselles was published in Paris from 1833 to 1922. Now the right picture is a Swedish magazine,
Freja Illustrated Skandinavisk modetidning,
which means Freja Illustrated Scandinavian Fashion Magazine. They have a digital archive of their fashion plates in Nordic Museum. If you look at here, it says Swedish edition of the German Die Modenwelt from the year of 1873 to 1907. And they have a lot of fashion plates from the Victorian era or from the 19th century. I believe this picture reference is quite straightforward. You can see the red dress has similar puff sleeve as Drusella's and Anastasia's. And the sleeves on this green dress lady, the shape is kind of similar to Cinderella, even though she has some kind of bow on top of it and Cinderella doesn't. But I would say overall shape still looks the same. Now let's talk about Cinderella's and stepsister's silhouette. If you don't already recognize the drawing style, this is from Journal de Demoiselles, dated back to 1885 and 1888. We also have another reference from British fashion magazine here, the Young Ladies' Journal Latest Paris Fashion, published on September 1st, 1871. This kind of style was around in 1870s to 1880s. We call those costume period as the bustle era. Why is it called the bustle? Because bustle is a padded undergarment worn underneath the skirt to add more fullness to the back. As you can see the exaggerated silhouette at the center back around the skirts here. Anastasia's and Drusella's dresses both have the exact same silhouette as the photo references we just saw. But if I were to choose, I'd say they're closer to 1870s silhouette because 1870s dresses are fuller as compared to 1880s dresses. But this is where it gets confusing. Cinderella's dress silhouette doesn't seem to come from 1870s. Her skirt looks bigger and rounder, and in fact, if you take a look at this scene, there seems to be more volume at the sides instead of at the back, like Anastasia's and Drusella's dresses. Also, if you take a closer look, you'll realize the front and the back part is much flatter than the sides. This reminds me of Marie Antoinette's period, around the year of 1760s to 1770s. We call those the Rococo period, by the way. Rococo period came after the Baroque period. It's also often called as the late Baroque period because the ornamental and the motifs and the patterns are a lot similar with Baroque period, only the colors are much softer. They're more pastel than Baroque period because Baroque has really striking colors. While we get a good look at Cinderella's gown on this scene, we can't ignore how her gown looks in the other scenes, such as this, and this. As I've mentioned before, the skirt shape is bigger and rounder from these scenes, which resembles the mid-Victorian era, around 1860s. Take a look at these references from 1869, from different magazines across Eastern European regions. Their gowns are rounder in shape and well, the silhouette matched Cinderella's dress really well. By now, you're probably wondering what the hell is the difference between silhouette of 1860s and 1870s, because they look so similar in this video. Well, that's because I used references from 1869, which is literally 1 year away from 1870. I feel late 1860s is the closest to Cinderella's dress because of the draped overskirt. I know this part doesn't really look like draped and instead it looks like some weird lump, but trust me, this is just an oversimplified drawing of a draped fabric. Early 1860s didn't have overskirt. Mid 1860s had overskirt but not pulled up or draped in any way. Late 1860s had draped overskirt. So yes, late 1860s looks similar to 1870, but if you look at here, the skirt is still slightly bigger than 1870s. There are several overskirts that we can analyze briefly from the ladies at the ball. We have the purple dress lady with highly decorated skirt, the Disney Too Lazy to Draw New Dress, so just color them differently lady, and of course our main ladies. Let's begin with Cinderella. This illustration is from 1871. The overskirt is pinched up a little bit at the sides and a lot at the center bangs, which creates similar shape to Cinderella's overskirt. The difference is that Cinderella's overskirt is not pinched up at the sides, and shorter in length, obviously. Anastasia and Drizella's overskirt, on the other hand, doesn't seem to have any drape, might even argue similar to 1860's no drape overskirt. But I'm gonna go with this dress in 1870 as an example instead, because their silhouette is more similar to the bustle era in 1870s. Unlike Cinderella's overskirt, theirs is not pinched up all the way to the waistline. The drape at the top creates more volume, and the rest of the fabric is let hang loose. Now, this lady's overskirt is also similar to the 1870 green dress. Actually, it's exactly the same in terms of the overskirt, except the color is lighter than her skirt, while the green dress is all unanimous color. Purple Lady's dress looks a lot like this vintage photograph of Beresford from 1867 by a French photographer, André Disdairy. This lady was part of his demi-monde photographic collection. Demi-monde is a French term which means half-world, commonly used to refer to someone whose life only circles around partying or indulge in hedonistic lifestyle back in mid to late 1800s. The women were called demi-mondaines, who are usually women of wealth who turn into courtesans or prostitutes and live an extravagant lifestyle, even if that means they have to loan here and there to find their lavish spendings. Now, these skirts are similar in my opinion because they both have 3 layers. This is the first layer, second layer, and third layer. And if we take a look at the second layer, you'll see the drape is very similar. It looks like curtain drape, but nonetheless similar, just less the bow. By the way, before we conclude everything, I want to include these vintage photographs I think look similar to all the details we've discussed so far. They're mostly from late 1860s to 1870s. These are photos of noble women and royals because photography was not widely accessible until early 1880s. Photographs until 1870s took a long time to take. I mean, literally, you have to stay still for up to 15 minutes. I say the young women's dresses in Cinderella movie comes from late 1860s to early 1870s. But I'm gonna stop here for this video because I think it's gonna be too long if I put everything in one video. So in the next video, we're going to analyze the accessories and other characters' costumes, such as Lady Tremaine's and the Prince Charming. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and please click like and subscribe if you want to see more contents from my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!